conversation on the illegal miners still underground in a disused mine shaft in Stilfontein. Yesterday, Police Minister Senzo Mchunu led a delegation to the shaft as efforts to bring hundreds of Zamazamas to the surface to face the law continue. Let's take a look at the conflict between human rights and law enforcement, which comes first, and what are the steps that should be taken. Researcher at the South African Institute of Advanced Constitutional Public Human Rights and International Law, Ropafadzo Maphosa, weighs in. Thank you so much for your time this morning and for joining us on this discussion. Now, we heard earlier in the week, as South Africans were grappling with the situation in Stilfontein, the minister in the presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, saying that we'll smoke them out. So that also just sparked a lot of conversation amongst South Africans with regards to human rights in South Africa versus also upholding the law, as we know that those that are underground are there illegally. What's your stance on the situation at Stilfontein?
Morning, Katlego, and good morning to your viewers as well. Thank you so much for having me this morning. You know, when I think of the situation we're dealing with, I think we first need to acknowledge how sensitive and how complex it is. It's not a simple matter of saying, oh, the police are correct, or we should prioritize one interest over another. I'm particularly going to highlight, for example, you know, the recent statement that came from the South African Human Rights Commission, where they highlighted, you know, the potential, the competing values and imperatives in the situation. We've got challenges that come with the rescue operation of this nature. And obviously there's an urgent need to protect the lives of the miners that are underground. But at the same time, this must be done while upholding the rule of the law and not risking the lives of, and the safety as well, of members of the South African Police Service. So, you know, there's so much context to this as well. Why is the South African Police Service approaching the situation like this? Why are we hearing talk of smoking them out, right? Over the past few years, we have seen various reports of Zamazamas terrorizing local communities in their mining areas. We've had allegations of sexual assault. We've had allegations of gun violence. And, you know, these are all things that obviously the police will be concerned about. And maybe this is what is informing their current approach. And it's also why the police is getting so much public support, because people find it hard to empathize with illegal miners at this point. So then the question becomes, if we are saying these people are criminals, are they not guaranteed human rights? Are they not to be afforded the protection of the Constitution because they're considered criminals? That is the delicate balance that I think we really need to discuss here today.
And does the Constitution not give a clear-cut line with regards to how to deal with such a situation?
I believe it does, right? Because when you look at the way that the Constitution has been drafted, we look at, for example, sections such as Section 10, which says everyone has the right to dignity. Everyone has the right to life under Section 11. There are no exceptions to these provisions, right? They are catering to everyone, whether you're a criminal or not, or whether you're a lawful citizen, you are still entitled to the protection of the Constitution. So ultimately, when the police are carrying out their functions, they are to consider these rights, because there is an obligation on the state and organs of state, such as the South African Police Service, to consider the rights of the fundamental rights and protect fundamental rights and fulfill fundamental rights in carrying out their functions. And even the legislation that sets up the South African Police Service, that is the South African Police Services Act, talks about this. It says when carrying out an arrest, the fundamental rights of the people involved must be considered. So I think both legislation and the Constitution are clear-cut in this regard.
So then what's your take when someone argues that that's exactly where criminality takes advantage, where they know that the Constitution protects the rights of everyone that is on the land of South Africa, yet they are able to terrorize communities, like you say, they are able to commit sexual violence against women and children within those communities. And when South Africans are saying, well, don't afford them that privilege of sending down food and water because of the behavior that they've inflicted on those communities.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? I believe South Africans are rightfully outraged, right? Because some of these people have been victims of Zamazamas or the actions carried out by Zamazamas in their communities. So South Africans are rightfully outraged. right? But at the same time, when we carry out law enforcement or when the police carries out law enforcement, there is still a balance that needs to be struck. So naturally, when a crime is committed, and we know illegal mining is a crime, this is very clear from legislation. So already the people who are underground are suspects of a crime. They are yet to be convicted, so we refer to them legally as suspects because there's no conviction yet, right? But still, even suspects have got rights, even detained persons, prisoners, everyone has got rights. But this does not mean that they are not to be held criminally accountable. So they will face the full might of the law. This is, when we say that criminals have got rights under the Constitution, it is not to endorse the crimes that they have committed. It is to say that when they are arrested, when they are put before courts, this should be done in a manner that is constitutional. There is a right to a fair trial. And if, for example, food is not sent, basic necessities are not sent underground, and those miners die, they cannot exercise, their right to a fair trial has already been violated, because without life, you can't exercise the right to a fair trial. That is the most basic right, because it allows other rights to be exercised. So what we are saying here is, let's respect their right to life. And once we ensure that they are alive and are able to face the full might of the law, we carry that out in a constitutional manner. So while the outrage is justified completely, it is understandable why people are very upset about the situation and why people are quick to say, you know what, leave them there, let them die. But unfortunately, that is not what the Constitution says. And our law enforcement institutions have to carry out their functions in a constitutional manner.
So, Ropafadzo, if I'm hearing you correctly in what you're saying now, especially with the fact that there are talks that there's a decomposed body down in that mine shaft, would the accountability and the responsibility of those that lose their lives in that mine shaft rest solely on the government?
I believe it would, yes. The government can be held accountable for that, because there is, for example, in the use of force, for example, where the police use lethal force to effect an arrest, they must do so in a proportional manner. There is very clear-cut situations in which the police can use force, right? When their lives are endangered or when someone else's life is in danger. So even the legislation itself makes it very clear under what situations the police can use force. In this regard, I'm comparing this because this is also a situation where now people are losing lives. So the question then is, are the measures that the police are taking proportional to the result that they want to achieve? And if it can be proved that by failing to provide food, by failing to provide basic necessities to the miners underground, the police have not acted proportionally, they've not acted reasonably in their functions, the government can be held accountable for this.
Very interesting. Thank you so much for your time and for these insights, Ropafadzo. Of course, this is one conversation that South Africans are debating over with regards to the rights of those that are illegally underground, and also in terms of what the law should take place. Thank you so much for your time this